Oregon rolls Michigan, and it wasn't even as close as it looked.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view post-Michigan not being able to keep up with Oregon, which is kind of what we thought. This is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The biggest plays from this game, I'll react to those coming up later on. And it wasn't all good news, but it was mostly pretty good news. So Oregon beats Michigan 38-17 in the Big House, and I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed because the opportunity to carbon copy the score from 2007 was right there for the taking, and they couldn't do it. And the opportunity to call a Statue of Liberty was there, and they couldn't quite build the sort of lead that warranted such things. But those are the biggest gripes that I have with Oregon following this game. Even bigger than this third quarter narrative that, Oregon, I guess it's backed up by statistics at some level, but Oregon hasn't been very good in the third quarter this year, and I'm supposed to think that that's incredibly worrisome. Indiana was trailing 10-0 against Michigan State after the first quarter today. They won by 30. Should they be worried about their lack of first quarter scoring? I mean, I think you play a four-quarter game for a reason, but Oregon played a four-quarter football game, and did it look exactly how you want at all times? No. You know why? Michigan's a pretty good team. Michigan's not a great team, just to be clear. They might win only one more game the rest of the season because they have to play Indiana and they have to play Ohio State. They're going to lose both of those football games. But Oregon played well. They didn't play their best, and they won by 21 points. Like, this is where Oregon is at. The problems, quote unquote, that people see with the Oregon football team right now, they are of the highest class variety. It is not, hey, I'm struggling to make rent. It's more like, hey, the penthouse is not as clean as I want it to be, and there's fog blocking my view of the water. That's where Oregon is. Now, in that particular world, it is a problem, but in the grand scheme of things, is that actually a problem? Not really, no. It's not. You need to live in a clean place, of course, but this is not a major issue. There are no huge glaring cracks with this team. And yes, I'll talk about the injuries to Marcus Harper and Tez Johnson, what that could mean on the third segment on today's show. But Oregon played well. They didn't play their best. They won by 21 against a team that has three guys on the defensive line that are going to play in the NFL. Dylan Gabriel was sacked 0 times. He was under pressure several times. That's to be expected. But again, the quarterback offensive line combination continues to be playing at a high level with the offensive coordinator and Will Stein. They're all doing a lot of really, really good things, and that's fantastic because Oregon is just continuing to play well. And I don't know that I'd say they played as well as they did last week against Illinois. Oh, what do you know? They were on the road. There are explanations for these sorts of things. And Oregon wins. They cover the spread. I mean, you know what they say, good teams win, great teams cover. And I like the way Oregon played. I am pleased. I'm not thrilled. I'm not over the moon. This game is about what I expected it to be. There was no hope, really, for Michigan's secondary to keep up with Oregon's receivers, especially when Evan Stewart is lassoing in balls in the back of the end zone. He made it look way too easy. I mean, he made that look way, way too easy. So I loved watching this particular game because Oregon came out again with a good plan. And I think when you watch good football teams, really good football teams, they come out with a good plan. They get off to strong starts. Oregon's been getting off to strong starts. Not every game this year, but most of them, they come out ready to play on both sides of the ball. You begin the game with a stop and a touchdown on the road. Boom. Take the crowd out of it. You had some explosive plays in there. Trayshawn Holden had a monster day for Trayshawn Holden, and Oregon needed that with Tez Johnson out with an injury. Holden goes for, wait for it, a season high, wait for it, 149 yards on 6 catches. I want to shout out Justice Lowe. I'll shout him out again on Monday's show, but I mean, guys stepped up and the depth on this Oregon team is really good in a lot of different areas. And I think the broadcast team, Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson, did a good job of highlighting how Dylan Gabriel, they pointed out what I have said for the last couple of weeks, that Gabriel is just running the offense and he's never staring a guy down. He's never really forcing the ball. And Michigan's lining up defensively going, we have no idea where the ball's going. No one knows. And Will Stein is getting the ball to all of these guys in a really efficient and effective way. Sadiq is awesome. Like, that's just the only way to put it. Kenny Sadiq is awesome. T. Ferg was back. Jordan Birch was back. I think T. Ferg got felt in this game a little bit more than Jordan Birch did, but the depth is just crazy across the board. This is what this Oregon team is. They don't have to play their best in order to win big. They don't have to play perfectly. They lost turnover battle. That was one of my keys going into it. It was being neutral or winning in the turnover margin. Either one would work, and guess what? If they'd had that, they would have won this game by even more. So Oregon, I should have touched on this a little bit more, but at the start of the segment, but Oregon wins the game 38-17. I don't think it was even that close. I really don't. I didn't have serious worry. I know Michigan had the ball down 14, driving the fourth quarter. Still felt like Oregon was going to win the football game. My confidence level was very high. They got the stop they needed to. Oregon outgains Michigan 470-270. Michigan, shockingly, they threw for more yardage than I thought they would. Davis Warren made a couple plays. Colston Loveland's really good. Michigan only runs for 105 yards. You force them to throw the ball. Yeah, they put up 17 points. I didn't think they would. It's frankly a mildly disappointing effort from the defense. But again, first world football problems. Gave up 17 points. Why was it 17 points? Well, Michigan might be figuring things out. I mean, Davis Warren on the first touchdown pass that he made, Brandon Johnson's blanketing the guy. And he makes a play. He makes a play. Sometimes you just tip your cap and say, you know what? That was a really good play. But Michigan was doing that to Oregon a lot more than Oregon was doing that to Michigan. Because when you come out and you jump on a team, you take the crowd out of it. And yeah, they got back into it as Michigan got themselves back into the game. But I always felt like Oregon was going to win. They get the stop, then they go on a 90-plus yard drive to end the game. And I just think this was this has become the expectation for Oregon fans. The expectation is, hey, you should be beating these teams by a pretty good amount. Michigan's not a great team. They're not a bad team. They're 3-3 in conference, and they clearly have made strides in the passing game over the last couple of weeks. That's not saying a ton because it was so dreadful prior to that, but Oregon took advantage of Will Johnson being out. Evan Stewart is great. The wide receiver depth was on full display. I've been hyping up that room for the last couple of weeks, and boy, they lived up to the billing when Tez Johnson went out early in the game, and there was no drop-off. They put up 38 points on a great defense. Oregon ran in this game on a top 15 nationally ranked run defense in Michigan. Oregon runs for, wait for it, 176 yards, just under 5 yards a carry. That's a really good number. Jordan James looked great. Another 100-yard game, another touchdown. No Whittington had a couple touchdowns. They're just firing on all cylinders. They're coming out and they are setting the tone in every single game. And that tone is you are not good enough to keep up with us, whoever that has been. Purdue, Illinois, Michigan State, now Michigan. Obviously, Ohio State is good enough, and we saw that. And I think that was a good thing for Oregon, by the way. I'll talk about that more on Monday's show. But yeah, I like this performance. It's really solid. I'm not over the moon, but I'm not massively underwhelmed either. I like this performance from Oregon because it shows again, as Dan Lanning likes to say, and we'll see on Ducks versus them next week, Oregon's playing Oregon every week. And yeah, they improved. They improved because, well, not so much. So let me rephrase that. They didn't improve from last week, but they have improved to the point where this is a loss that you can kind of nitpick in a couple areas. I'm just not really going to. This is how I expected Oregon to play. They allowed a few more points than they should have, but that came because of certain moments in the football game, and I'm going to talk about those coming up next. First, let's talk about 5 Hour Energy. So I just got back from a road trip in Abilene, Texas. Southern Utah, unfortunately, not successful in their venture to knock off a top 20 team. They lose by 3 points, but I'm recording this show. It's 11 o'clock at night, and I need a boost. Where am I going? 5 Hour Energy. Duh. Being a passionate football fan, not just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or agonizing overtime games. 5 Hour Energy knows no matter who you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for a big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long, and that's why the limited edition Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. It's available on 5hourenergy.com, and it is shipped nationwide. Did I go with a dash of a 5 Hour Energy before the second segment sip of ginger tea? Yeah, I did. You know why? Because I got to stay awake to do shows tonight. So, the key moments in this football game. Let's start early on. And one of the many reasons, of which there are several, that I don't think this game was as close as the score indicated at times, beyond a perusal of the box score, is Tez Johnson gets hurt and Ryan Pelham fumbles a punt. Now, a lot of people will look at this and say, oh man, that's I can't believe a true freshman fumble. I can't. Well, you kind of can believe. I don't even know if people would say that. I think they'd just be frustrated that Oregon fumbled the football there. I don't put that on Ryan Pelham. That's on the coaching staff. That is 100% on the coaching staff. Tez Johnson goes out, and you put Ryan Pelham back there. You know what they should have been telling him? Maybe he was told this, and he disregarded the direction. Can never know for sure. Will never know for sure. But you're putting a true freshman out there who's clearly the number 2 guy in punt return. He's earned that right in practice. So there's no reason to say, hey, you're the number 2 guy, and then not have him be the number 2 guy on game day there. But he never, and I mean never, under no circumstance, should have returned the kick. Not because there wasn't some room to return and pick up a few yards, but because that is a true freshman seeing his first real game action in his career on the road at the big house. You can say it's just a football game and it's just a nameless, faceless opponent playing Oregon, all this sort of stuff. Yeah, I guarantee you he was aware. I guarantee you he was aware of those sorts of things. And he did the hard part. He caught the punt. But the message to him as he took the field should have been, you were to go out there, you were to make a fair catch and do absolutely nothing else. That was not the time to give him the opportunity to shine, because you're going up against an offense that is not capable of consistently sustaining drives. So 7 of Michigan's 17 points, or one of their 3 scoring drives, came following this punt. And that was after Oregon stopped Michigan, scored a touchdown, stopped Michigan again. Okay, on their next offensive drive, when they actually got the ball to the offense, oh, what do you know? Oregon goes and scores a touchdown. So if you send Pelham out there to just fair catch the ball and then pat him on the back because, hey, in that environment with guys bearing down on you, you made the indication, you hauled it in, you did your job. If that had been what took place, Oregon's up 14-0. And this game has a much different feel. Instead, I think Michigan was more willing to remain committed to the run. They didn't run it very well. Like I said, only 105 yards on the ground. They averaged 3.8 yards a carry. That's a great number for the Oregon defensive line and linebacking unit. I think Tosh Lupoy and Dan Lanning should be really happy with that particular number. But if you remove that particular sequence, Oregon goes up 14-0. And it's different. It's a different football game. The crowd, not going to be as into it. They'll start to feel a little bit more dejected. The team will have that sense of urgency of, oh boy, we're down 14-0 here. We really got to go. Instead, they get a gift. And then Oregon gets it to a 3rd and goal. They flush out Davis Warren, and you know what? Props. He's the starter again for Michigan for a reason, because the coaches saw something in practice. That was a heck of a throw. That was a heck of a throw, and probably an even better catch. I forget the guy who made it. I want to give him his flowers because that was Tyler Morris. Tyler Morris. So this is an inept, anemic passing game for Michigan all season long. I talked about it this week, and one of the reasons I thought Oregon would hold Michigan without an offensive touchdown, there's nothing you can do about that. Yeah, you could sack Davis Warren, but you know what? He's got a little mobility. He runs out. He throws. Brandon Johnson's all over him, and the guy snares it. It was so hard to see live on television that you kind of went, wait, did he catch that? That was a touchdown? Oh, wow. Like, guy made a heck of a play. But that scoring drive, 5 plays, 28 yards. The next Michigan scoring drive was a field goal, 7 plays, 55 yards. They only had one scoring drive of over 60 yards. Like, it was not a day. The defense was not as far off as 17 points indicates. Special teams was a net negative today for Oregon, without question. And yeah, they were able to make a field goal. Atticus Sappington hit a 26-yarder late in the third quarter, Oregon's only points of the third. But there was one sustained scoring drive. And then at the end of the game, Michigan had a big drive. They went down the field. And hold on, let me see what that drive looked like. They went down 11 plays, 70 yards. Oregon trying to not give up the big play, and guess what? They were up 2 touchdowns, which is why you kick a field goal, take points on the road. I very much appreciated that Dan Lanning and company decided to do that. So they're up 2 touchdowns. Michigan needs a touchdown, and then they get the stop on 4th down. It was 4th and 5, and you can make whatever you want of the Michigan rotating quarterback situation, but Oregon got the stop. They got the stop that they were looking for. So I think that punt and the whole sequence really threw this game over to Michigan as much as it possibly could. And guess what? They still lost by 21. Like, all of that happens, and Oregon still wins the game by 21 points. Here was my favorite sequence of the game. So Evan Stewart is an alien. This guy made the easiest one-handed catch that was so not easy. It was so not easy, and he made it look ridiculously simple. And Marcus Harper, who I'll talk about later on today's show, because unfortunately he got injured, he drifts downfield. It was a senseless penalty. Happens. Oregon only had 2 penalties in this game for 10 yards, by the way. Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. When a lot of penalties are bad coaching, I hope we can go in the other direction with that pendulum and say, yeah, very few penalties are very good coaching, but that was one of them. So Oregon has a chunk play taken off the board. Ineligible man downfield. It's the greatest catch that didn't count. And Oregon scored anyway. That was my favorite sequence of the game. But by a mile, by an absolute mile, that they were still able to go down and get a touchdown after that, I think is just reflective of where this team's mentality is. All right, it's a setback, but we haven't been completely derailed. They're not operating with thin margins on either side of the ball. I talked about the punt as a big turning point in the game because it absolutely was. But Oregon still wins by 21. If that doesn't happen, they might win by 28 or 30 plus, and maybe we would have seen a Statue of Liberty again. So I was really, really pleased, and I just continue to be pleased with the next man up mentality, with the way this team starts football games, with the way they respond to adversity during games. Yeah, the Michigan crowd did get back into it after the fumble. Oregon responded. Michigan scores a touchdown on 3rd and goal. Wow, they made a heck of a play. Offense right down the field. Go score a touchdown. Whatever Oregon needs in the game. Think back to the Ohio State game. The botched review in the first quarter leads to an Ohio State touchdown. Guess what? Offense goes down. Or the offense, I think, actually was forced to punt, and then the defense forced turnover. Then the offense was able to score. But they're not worried about an individual moment defining the entire game. I think there is a really high level of trust amongst those players in the coaching staff to put them in positions to succeed, and that has given them the confidence to know, hey, you can win this football game. You can overcome this, that, and the other thing. And Oregon, I think, showed that again in this football game. So let me know your thoughts on the biggest moments of this game or anything of this particular game or anything that you want me to talk about on Monday's show. But those were some of the inflection points that really stood out to me, and I think Oregon handled them all really, really well. And that's a good thing to see. Not everything was great. Not everything was great. There were 2 injuries in this game. Don't know. Details, don't know. Impact, do know. Depending on the details of the injuries and whatnot. I'll talk about that coming up next. First, let's talk about FanDuel. Did you take Oregon minus 15.5? Well, if you did, you're a happy camper. Oregon's touchdown drive sealed the deal with the hold on the drive prior. It was looking a little dicey there, but Oregon covered the number. Good teams win, great teams cover. That's what they say. And you can get ready to tackle the NFL action with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel, of course. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. If ever you had a question about, does recruiting matter? Does talent acquisition matter? Spencer, why in July do you talk about the number 6 receiver or number 3 offensive guard? Well, here we are. So, talked about the good. The bad isn't so much things that Oregon didn't do, aside from not scoring a touchdown in the third quarter. They had 2 drives, by the way. They punted on one. It turns out Michigan's defense is good. And then they marched down the field and settled for a field goal on the other. They won the game 38-17. I think Oregon fans should be happy with that, and I think for the most part they are. But no one's happy that Tez Johnson got hurt. He was in a sling during the game on the sideline. No one's happy Marcus Harper got hurt, got rolled up on, didn't look great. I do not know is the answer. I don't know that Dan Lanning knows. I haven't seen what his post-game comments were, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say he didn't say very much, if anything, on these particular injuries. But the answer to the question, how does Oregon survive? As wild as it sounds, let's say each of these guys are missing the rest of the regular season. Just hypothetically. That is completely hypothetical. I want to make that very clear. I do not know how long these guys are going to be out. Oregon might not know how long they could be out for. Oregon will miss Marcus Harper far more than Tez Johnson. The receiving core is just crazy talented. And Tez is someone you want to have back because on third down, boy, I want him on the field. But the talent in that wide receiver room is crazy. It's actually crazy. The way that they just don't suffer a drop-off. T. Ferg has been out for the last 2 games. The tight ends have been involved and productive. Tez Johnson goes out. Gabriel goes for almost 300 yards passing. I mean, I don't know what more you could possibly want from these guys. They are just stepping up time and time and time again. And look, I didn't have Justice Lowe on my radar until fall camp really came around. When he got there and guys were saying, yeah, that guy could be scary good. Yeah, that guy looks really, really good. Really, really good. But the Marcus Harper injury, I'll say concerns me, doesn't worry me. If you were to give me a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being I'm not worried at all, 5 being I'm in a full-blown panic. I think the only thing that would give me a 5 at this point is Dylan Gabriel or Derek Harmon going out. Derek Harmon is so good. That guy is so good at football. He's phenomenally good at this whole football thing. I'd put Marcus Harper at a 3 because the last time there was an injury and there had to be shuffling on the interior of the offensive line, it didn't look good. Now, I got questions leading up to this game all week about Matthew Bedford. Hey, what's Matthew Bedford's availability? My understanding is he's not hurt. He's just not playing because once Oregon found a unit up front that was able to fit, well, you're not going to disrupt that at a position where chemistry is absolutely paramount. It's not, a wide receiving group where everyone runs their own individual route. Like, you have to have guys that work together and work in tandem very well. And this offensive line has clearly shown an ability to do that. And if Harper is out, I would presume Bedford, who was a projected starter, by the way, coming into this year and is a 6th-year senior transfer from Indiana. Indiana, boy, they're a wagon right now. I would think that's the most likely option. If he's not completely ready to go, is Davey Uli healthy? That's the next question. And if he's not healthy, you see how many questions there are there? That's why this is a concern. It's not a huge worry because we don't know the extent of the injury. Like, does Oregon need him for Maryland next week? No, Maryland is not a great football team, and it's at Autzen Stadium. Oregon should be just fine no matter who they're playing at right guard. But down the line, if you play Ohio State again, if you play Indiana in the Big Ten championship game, yeah, you should probably be able to either have continuity starting next week for the final 3 games of the regular season, or be able to get Marcus Harper back. So I think that's the far more impactful injury of the two. And I want Tez back as soon as humanly possible. That one's 2 for me. That one is a 2 because I feel better about the situation replacing Tez Johnson than I do the situation replacing Marcus Harper, which isn't to say those guys aren't capable, that they can't figure it out, but definitely follow along on, Dan Lanning will have a press conference on Monday. I am sure he will be asked about the injuries to Tez and Marcus Harper, and we'll know more at that time. But for now, Oregon's really deep. Oregon's really good. They didn't play their best game, and they won by 21 points on the road against a team that's got NFL guys all over the place. And look, I don't know if Evan Stewart caught the ball. I got to review that replay. I think it hit his arm as it bounced down before going back up. The CBS crew thought that it was an incomplete pass. All right, then Oregon only should have won the game 34-17. Whoop-de-doo. 38-17 final. I don't think it was even that close. Oregon plays well. They're 9-0 for the first time since 2012. The only other time they've been 9-0, 2010. I hope I don't need to remind you all what happened in 2010. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.